Welcome, you 7,427 amazing subscribers, to a very special live stream focusing on GRC with the InfoSec Live community's very own Paul Robinson. Paul's been in the cybersecurity and risk space since October 2009. His introduction to the industry was during the advent of the world of Web 2.0, and he was able to see the beginning and hypergrowth of many cybersecurity solutions providers offering consulting services around these innovative tools. He also gives up tons of his time to mentor folks in the InfoSec Live community and beyond, so super excited to finally be chatting with him in the studio here today. But before we bring him on, I'm your host, Simon Lindstedt, and by sharing stories and best practice over the last few months, it's led to nearly 100,000 views here on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. Let's see if we can hit 10,000 by the end of the year. Quick QR code to bring up here for you. So back in the community where all of this started, we have study groups, mentor sessions, regular networking sessions to help you raise your game in cybersecurity. So make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. Link is right here. And let's not forget that without our sponsors, these insightful events wouldn't be possible. So a special thank you to Jason, Owen, and all the team at Rapid7 for supporting our community efforts and making these insightful streams possible. Our organizations have great synergy, and we're super excited to see how we can serve the wider security community in 2023 and beyond. And watch this space from very exciting in-person events coming up soon. This links through to their fundamentals section on their website, which has tons of free resources on cloud security, vulnerability risk management, AppSec detection and response. And of course, don't forget about their amazing open source tools such as Metasploit and Velociraptor, all these things helping the wonderful InfoSec community. Now, if you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a way you can show your appreciation right here on our YouTube channel with 3 tiers of membership, allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. I've just noticed the chat's disappeared as well, so I'll have to sort that out in a moment. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make these interactive, so make sure you also drop any questions in the chat. Time for me to stop rambling on. Let's bring on Paul and dig into the GRC experience. I'm gonna have to get rid of this. Look, I'm gonna have to complain to Restream, I think, Paul, because the chat's now failed in 2 events in a row. Let me turn it off and back on again. The problem is, being nearly 50, I find it very difficult, and male, find it very difficult to do 2 things at once. So I can't have the YouTube chat up and this chat as well. It's going to drive me insane. But massive welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Really appreciate it.
Listen, dude, I don't guarantee many things, but I will guarantee something. I am not as cool as the intro to this talk, so I don't want to disappoint our guests here today, but that was amazing. Completely humble, completely honored to be here, and just want to bring some value to our community and help people out as much as I possibly can.
You certainly do all of those things, Paul. And the intro, as my grandmother used to say, and I've said on here many times, it's a bit all fur coat and no knickers, isn't it? It's all glitzy and glamour, but it's just me behind the scenes with my little fingers on the keyboard. So you bring some substance and some experience to the show, Paul. That's what I was going to say. Awesome. So can we start off, while I mess around with the chat and try and get that working, can I ask you just to tell our audience a bit about your background, so where you've come from and how you've ended up where you are now?
Sure. Yeah, I would definitely love to do that. So, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn, Coney Island to be exact. And it was an interesting place to grow up in. This is in the late 80s through the 90s where I grew up in that. And uh, a lot of people talk about the stories of how they got into tech. My dad was a network engineer, or my mom was in tech or something like that. I didn't grow up with any of that. My dad ran a homeless and drug addicted mission in Coney Island. My whole my whole growing up. So I didn't grow up in business. He didn't have contacts at JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs or anything like that. I got to grow up in the real world, and it was an amazing, amazing childhood from the perspective of I was really exposed to what reality was at an early age. I am blessed. I have two parents, two great, wonderful parents that I grew up with. Very stable home. Not poverty stricken by any stretch, but I grew up with it around me. So it's not where I go home and everybody's like our family around there talking about single moms and abusive situations and drugs and murder.
How did that change your outlook on life compared to people who
It,
haven't experienced that?
yeah, it changed. I'll say two ways that it changed me. One is it changed me from the perspective of you always have to lend a helping hand, and you're in a community. So community. The word's kind of been bastardized, I think, over the last few years, where people are like, "Oh, I want a community," but your community 9 times out of 10 looks like you. Like my community didn't. Like it was all different races, all different ages, all different genders, all different whatever you want to call it, and it taught me the value of being in a community. I mean, we probably have very different backgrounds growing up, but because I value you as a person, it's like, yeah, you're a part of my community. That was so important. The other thing that growing up in that environment really taught me was the value of helping
Yeah,
people as well. And I kind of hit on that with the first thing, but helping's a little bit different. It's being sensitive to the needs of others around you,
yeah.
and not stepping on people to get over. I was talking to my son the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to be confident, but I don't want to be cocky." And I'm like, the difference between that is with confidence, you're using your skills to elevate others. Cockiness is using your skills to step on others and to use them as footstools to get on up. It's kind of the same thing, with helping people. It's like, hey, I want to help you, not to use you as another rung on my ladder to success.
It explains a lot as to what drives you to try and help so many people in this industry, I think, Paul. And I think for people who've met you and have been mentored by you and perhaps worked with you and don't know your background, it's all slotting into place now why you're such an amazing guy. I mean, the fundamental of having that strong mother and father figure, I think, as well, helping guide you. I'm not going to get into my history. It's not what this show's about, but I did have that at points and didn't. And I look back, and I also didn't have that built-in desire to try and help other people like you have. It took me to make lots of mistakes to get to that point. So I envy you a little bit for that, Paul, but in a good way.
Well, the sad thing about it is I made plenty of mistakes along the way with that. So you're not you're not immune to mistakes. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, so that was kind of how I grew up. And when I got into my 20s, I got married. Also, shout out to Erica Robinson today. Today is our 20th anniversary. So, got married 20 years.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But when we got married, it was just trying to find a job and kind of in that old mindset of, hey, got to get a job, got to provide and do whatever. So I got into telecom early on in my career, and I joined an organization in 2009 to do telecom. And within a week, they changed their business model to cybersecurity. And I didn't know anything about it. So I kind of jumped in on that. And it's been an amazing journey ever since of being involved in that. But going back to what we were originally talking about, what drew me to cybersecurity was a human element of it. Like I'm not a zeros and ones guy. I think I've talked to enough people on here that they know that I'm not circuits and wires inside of me and zeros and ones and 255 dot whatever. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not my passion of it. But the passion of it, and I think where I see a lot of the folks that are a part of InfoSec Live, is they have a genuine desire to help people. There's an itch that can be scratched of helping people along the way from that perspective.
Well, we've got another one in the chat we should probably mention, in Justin Merhoff. You know, he's another person like yourself who's driven to help others and actually drive some change in the world as well, which I think is there's too many people who just plod along and get on with what they need to do. It's important to have people like yourselves.
Yeah, and it's authentic help too. You know, kind of going back to you know, my philosophy of helping people. It's definitely authentic help. Justin's very authentic. You know, Precious, Itza, to name a few people that I've met, Joe Wells, you know, some other people in there that really authentically want to help people. And that's what our industry needs. You know, there are a lot of people out there, I'd say wolves in sheep's clothing, that put out the persona that they want to help. But when it push comes to shove, are you going to answer that text off hours?
I'll tell you what, we could make a real statement on this show by dropping some names now, but perhaps we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't look good in orange. So I want to stay out of incarceration. But yeah, we'll just let ESP sit there. We'll let everybody kind of have a mental discussion.
We'll send some. I think you can. Again, it's going back to that all fur coat and no knickers statement again, isn't it? After a while, you get the depth of a person and you work out what it is that they're actually trying to do by their actions more than by what they say. I think that's the one bit of advice I'd have for anyone who's trying to come into the industry and is being blinded by all these people that can help. There are tons of people that can help, but ironically, it's normally not the ones who are shouting about it every 5 minutes that are doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, and I tell people, you know, we also have another phrase, you know, hey, my circle, my inner circle. And I'm not big on the inner circle. I'm big on your corner. And I kind of use the boxing analogy. You know, the corner is tighter than a circle. Yeah. And, you know, after a round of boxing, you're beaten up, you're bloody. Like, you need people around you that are going to give you instruction. Hey, I saw you mess this up. You got to fix this. Or, hey, man, you can do it. Throwing cold water in your face or giving you the smelling salts to wake you up. Really focus in on getting a corner. And that's one thing I want everybody to understand here, whether you are employed currently in cybersecurity or you're looking for a job, it's important to kind of shrink that circle of influence and make it into a corner where people are really going to be invested in your success, and vice versa. You could be invested in their success. You know, it's a bilateral thing, and it's something that I've learned throughout my career. I've been exposed to some amazing people, and you know, knowing that they've helped me, and then there've been ways that I can help them. It's always important to pay back from the experience that you're getting.
Very much so. Sorry, I was trying to do two things at once there. Why is the chat gone again? Has it gone off yours as well, or is it just mine?
I just saw something pop up.
Yeah, no, it's disappeared again. I don't know whether I've got an unstable connection. Maybe let me click on that and try again. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Back to your childhood. So, solid upbringing, got your desire for helping people. Talk to me about school. What happened next? How did you end up in this industry?
Yeah. So, from a school perspective, I'll start at college. So it's interesting. I actually went to Bible college because my dad, working in a mission, got 50% off tuition at this college and ended up going there. You know, I've done some therapy after doing my college experiences, so we won't go into that. But it was good, you know, to have that experience. Meeting good friends and learning things. I actually took a business minor there, and our business chair was the former head of operations at Campbell's Soup, and gave me some really, really good business lessons, you know, not only from textbook, but just from experiences and life, and really poured into my life. Again, I'm from Coney Island, Brooklyn. He was from a posh area in South Jersey. You know, if you know the area of South Jersey, there's some really posh areas there. And he just elevated me, and not from the perspective of, well, here's this poor kid from Brooklyn, but he was just like, yeah, I see something in you, and I want to spend time with you, and I want to elevate you, to where you want to go. It wasn't cybersecurity back then, but he's just like giving me all of these wonderful tips about business and how to act in business and how to present yourself. And it wasn't, hey, you got to wear a 3-piece suit all the time, or, you got to go to, Oxford or Harvard and work on your English. It was just how you treat people, how you interact with people. And that's something I could take wherever that I go, and that's just the basic skills, life skills that you can have to bring into your business life that you have.
Absolutely. We've got a bit of breaking news. We've got a quick video that we've got to play here that I wasn't expecting this at all, but it relates actually to something you mentioned earlier. So here we go. There you go. That's why I wasn't paying attention a moment ago.
Thank you.
So you can tell your wife that was just before 21 minutes on here. You can show your wife how much you do appreciate her, Paul. That was
I will absolutely do that. Thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. So what is it that chat's working again? What is it that got you into tech? How did that happen?
Yeah, it worked, and this is going to sound odd because tech can be very complicated and very binary in thought. It was actually the rationalization around tech that got me into what it is that I do. And it's kind of been my quasi superpower of being able to survive in the industry. And this is something that I encourage a lot of our members to do, is that if you have the ability to take complex, complicated scenarios and situations and dumb it down to, the level of where,
Simon level.
It's Paul level. And I work at one of the places I worked at, they nicknamed me the king of analogies. And I'm like, yeah, it's not because I'm like this brilliant storyteller or I can take things, but it's like, that's how I understand it. And it's very interesting that, I'll use some analogies of people like, well, you can't say that in a business meeting. I'm like, I've sat at boardroom tables where I've given these analogies, and the executives and the board members eat it up. They eat it up because they don't understand this stuff. That's why they're hiring us. They're hiring all of us. All of you are taking these wonderful courses. All of you are doing remedial stuff on the back end, not because they want you to bore them to tears with heat maps and charts and graphs, or
let's not forget the acronyms, Paul.
The acronym soup. They just want you to tell you straight out. One of my favorite movies is Margin Call, and I always think of the boardroom scene when everything's falling apart in the company and it's 4:00 in the morning and the boardroom is filled and the president comes in and he's like, someone tell me what happened. And like, everyone's like, well, this and that. He's like, no. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And the guy that does gets through to him, and then action happens. And I've kind of taken that philosophy as I've been into tech and really have said, hey, I can take this strength that I have and apply it to the people that I speak with, not to sound like some smart guy, like, and try to intimidate. That's what a lot of people do, whether you're selling it, whether you're producing results inside of a company. We want to sound so smart and so sophisticated.
I think it's the same in other industries. I mean, I spent over 20 years in financial services, and the best consultants or the best advisors were the ones that could talk in layman's terms. The ones who had all the certificates, they tended to be, no offense to them, the ones who liked to impart their knowledge with their clients that the clients really didn't care about. They cared about what risk they were taking and what return they were going to get, which is a little bit similar to when you're speaking to the board, I would imagine.
1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
1 + 1 = 2. Like, don't show me the X's and the Y's and the algorithms that get to it. 1 + 1, how do I get to 2 as quick as possible?
Yeah. So what was your first job in tech?
My first job in tech was, I worked for a conference call company, and I was selling WebEx services to Fortune 500 companies that said that it was of the devil and that no one will ever use WebEx or web conferencing because we always get on planes, we always stay at hotels, we always shake hands and meet with people. And they were Fortune 500 companies that were saying this. So it was a great proving ground for me to kind of talk about the logic around web conferencing when it wasn't even something that was popular. And it translated into security, because you'll have conversations with folks about security, clear as day. You have a problem. You have an issue here that needs to be solved, and they come up with every excuse not to do it. And so I think it's given me patience as I've talked to people and work with people and consult people in cyber and in risk. That is something that I brought along the way with me for tech. But yeah, it was my first job. It was WebEx, and I guess Cisco saw something in it because they bought it and blew that up. So I was in the right place at the right time. It's just early.
Very much so. And where did you go from there?
And then from there, I actually went into healthcare. So I got laid off. Funny story. I got laid off. My daughter was 6 months old, and my wife found out that she was pregnant with my son the day after I got laid off. So got laid off on that. That was interesting. And then my boss, who was at the conference company, got a job as a COO at a healthcare organization. So I managed operations there for a while, worked with hiring in the call center, managing in the call center, kind of took a break, and I was like, yeah, I got to get back into tech. And so my next step after that was a company where I first started cyber.
Excellent. And where was that, Paul? What was the first cyber role?
First cyber role was my exact title was account executive, and this is old school, a list of 13,000 names. Some people had deceased that I was calling. Like, it was brutal. It was really bad. But it was
they call it an orphan client bank in financial services, and I've had a few of those.
Yeah. Brutal. But it was an account executive, and I joke about it, but really what it did was that it brought a sense of humility along to what it was that I was doing. Like, some people blow it up in the beginning and they're hot shots and whatever. But I remember cold February afternoons when I was on the phone and people are like, we don't do anything with cybersecurity, or, whatever, and blah, 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 and all like that. And I remember that. And I still take those memories and those scenarios with me to today and say, hey, listen, you got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere and doing that. But, that job was amazing because as you mentioned in the intro, working with the Web 2.0 craze of cybersecurity. Yeah. So I got to see Palo in its early, instances, Forescout, Proofpoint, IBM cybersecurity services. Like, I got this amazing education of what it takes to grow an organization, and to see these companies now with $100-$200 stock prices and their household names at this point. It's like, that's really cool that I got to remember, way back when these organizations were just starting. So it was an amazing experience.
What's been the biggest learning point from what you've seen? I mean, you've been in the industry, you said at the start, when I said 2009, I think it was. I mean, that was pretty early days when it comes to cybersecurity. I mean, I'd argue probably cyber wasn't even a term back then, was it?
I think it was. Yeah,
it was. Yeah. What's the biggest change you've seen since starting in the industry?
You ready for this one? I actually think the apathy has gotten worse in cybersecurity, and it's not gospel. If someone wants to debate it, I don't debate. I let everybody have their feelings or whatever, so I won't debate it. But when I started in 2009, and you have the conversations, hey, we're not worried about malware because the only thing that's out there is Stuxnet, and Stuxnet is just used to destroy electric grids from Iran, or no one wants our data because we're too small. Like, I'm like, okay, at some point the paradigm is going to shift here, and we're going to change into where, everybody's going to be concerned about it. But when I think about it today, it's actually worse because there is more issues and problems, and we're connected more, and we're working off site more, and we have all these things, and it's still, well, I don't have the budget, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the resources with it. And so that's a change. That's like a weird change that's taken place. That's not positive.
Well, let's dig into that then. So
Yeah,
I've got my own ideas for why that's happened. What's your opinion on that, rather than me forcing mine down your throat?
I think bad selling tactics is high up on the list. I think a lot of cybersecurity organizations are hiring salespeople that have sold tech and translating it into cybersecurity and saying, okay, I worked 15 years at HP. I have a Rolodex of people that I can call. They go to a cybersecurity company and they fall flat on their face. And it's not because they're bad at what they do, but comparing selling tech to cybersecurity is like apples and dump trucks, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like
I'd also argue that the ones who are successful in that same position are another reason that practice is why the industry is the way it is, because firms want those experienced salespeople for that very reason, the ones with the list of the leaders that they've already got. So what's happening is products are getting churned and burned around the same people, and there's not enough penetration into the smaller companies where people are now starting to adopt it. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, and you're absolutely right. And you know, and someone said it best. I was reading an article the other day, is that companies don't want salespeople. They want consultants. They want advisors. They want people that know the industry cold, that can help them along the way. Because guess what? Newsflash. I was talking about this the other day with somebody. They've already done their homework. Like, there's so much information that's out there. So if I have an email security issue, they've done all the homework. So by the time they get to you, or by the time you by chance reach out to them and the timing is right and everything, they have everything formulated. They just need someone that is going to get them over the hump and get them to where they need to get to. And that's not a sales job. That's knowing your industry cold. That's knowing your product cold. And now here is one of the tough things that businesses don't want to talk about are here. If you don't have what it is that the client is looking for, pull the ripcord and get them to where they need to get. Because I've been involved in so many meetings where someone is like, hey, I need EDR, I need EDR, I need EDR. And then somehow it turns into a next generation firewall discussion where it's like, well, we have some sort of functions in here. It's like, well, that's a firewall. Why are we talking about firewalls when we're talking about EDR? So it's really, and I know you don't get a market cap of $2.5 billion by doing that. And, it's kind of pie in the sky. And, okay, I get it. But if you want real success, and if you're in cybersecurity for empathy, which is the reason you should be in this, you need to be guiding people along the way. I can't begin to tell you the amazing relationships that I've formed over the years with very, very high level cybersecurity people. And a majority of those relationships that I've had, and they have bought a lot of stuff from me, is because I saw something and didn't push it on them because they didn't need it. They just didn't need it. Like, when you do need it, please call me. Like,
you use these is what you did.
Yes. That's why we have two of these, and one of these is you got to listen. But it's about building partnerships with the people that you're doing business with. That's why I hate, cybersecurity sales companies that will, oh, well, we're killing it and we're 180% the plan, and and all like that. And okay, so, celebrate your accomplishments and whatever, but at what cost are you 180% the plan? Are you really solving the problem that you have been set out for? And I've been in sales majority of my whole career. I'm not downing it. I'm not saying all salespeople are bad or all tactics are bad.
No, they're not.
We're in a capitalist society, and it's to make money, and I get it. But especially around cybersecurity, there is a role and responsibility that you have to be sensible in how you're presenting your product and solution to a client, and making sure that
there's a shift. There is a shift going on, right? There are some companies who are finally realizing that it's that consultative approach that works. But as you said a few moments ago, while they're throwing a million messages out and getting a 2% hit rate, they're still making money, aren't they? But that's not, like you said earlier, it's not addressing the overall problem that we've got as a society with cybersecurity. It's just making more profit. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in, right?
It is. It is. It really is.
So before we jump on to the questions, because we've got quite a few to get through, you've changed what you're doing this year. I think April was your big change. Talk to us about the whys and the whats of that.
Yeah, so kind of my soapbox that I just gave led me into what it is that I'm doing now. So there's just a real, like I said, there's just a real problem in our industry of organizations that truly need help but are scared to ask for help because they don't want to get caught in vendor spin. Someone has a problem in cybersecurity. We're really one of the few industries of where if you have a question or something that you need to get answered, you got to go to a vendor. Like, there's no consumer reports or some. There are some consumer report like services out there. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to go into jail, but they have their own things that will just leave out in the ether and let people realize it for themselves. So what I have decided to do is to start my own advisory firm to interact with businesses, mainly around SMB, mid-sized enterprise, or a few enterprise clients that I do work with. But really what it's designed to do is to get companies to understand how cybersecurity works inside of their business and understand the risks that they face, not from you're going to get malware, but our company can get shut down if we experience malware and we can't produce the goods and services that we have. And so really trying to guide organizations in the fact of like, okay, let's understand cyber as it pertains to business. What is your reliance on connectivity? What is your reliance on applications? What is your reliance on connected, tools that you have for manufacturing or healthcare? And then let's just start there. And then when it comes time to procure services or goods, now you have an idea what you're coming to the table with, and now you have the power to drive the conversations with the vendors rather than vice versa, because vendors will come in, they'll have this pre-canned package thing of what you need to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to explode. Your parents' house is going to explode, the whole nine. Like, it's kind of a disaster. But what you do is now that you're prepared to have the conversations, you say, okay, here are the three things that I need this thing to do, A, B, and C. Show me how you do A, B, and C, and then we can move on from there and get to that point. And it actually helps the vendors out too, because the vendor side is really frustrated with people bringing opportunities to them, and they're like, hey, I just heard cybersecurity, so I just brought you in. And you bring them in, and they need a server, or they need a they need a whatever, nothing related to the thing. So when you come to the vendor and say, hey, this is what they need, now their discussion is more targeted. Now their talking points are specific to what it is that they need, and don't have to go through this whole major production because nobody cares that you're Inc. 500. Nobody cares that you're publicly traded. Nobody cares about the fact that you sponsor a suite at a sporting event. All they care about is this tool going to enable my business to do business in a efficient way securely? That's all they care about. So my goal is that when I bring organizations and vendors together, is let's cut through all of that stuff immediately and see how this tool or this service can meet the goals and objectives of the organization from a business perspective.
I love that. And I think as Lona Washington just made the comment, more companies than they realize need that kind of advice. And from having the show with Greg Vandergast, who's just gone on board with CDW, the reason they're taking him on board, I mean, they're one of the biggest value-added, I love that phrase, by the way, value-added resellers. They're one of the biggest VARs in the world. And they've taken him on to try and offer more of a consultancy piece to their clients than the sales piece, which I think is massively missing. And if you compare it to other industries, I mean, you look at more, I mean, because again, 20 odd years old, I would suggest maybe 25 push the industry as a whole, and it's still not mature. If you look at financial services industry, it has matured. And when you look at the ways companies do business, they do it in very different ways. They have more of a consultancy approach, so look at investment houses who are selling their investment funds. They don't have salespeople who ring up and say, buy our funds. They have consultants who go out and consult with other consultants who are offering tax advice or structure advice, and they provide the knowledge and the kind of context for the organization rather than just selling that product. And I think hopefully, as you said, you were hoping this back in 2009, but hopefully the industry will finally start to morph into something similar. Let's bring the questions up. I think that's a good chance to do that now. So the first one is from Harish. Hey Harish, good to see you. And it is this: is auditing the first step into getting into GRC? So is this, Harish, I think if I'm right, you are looking to break into the industry at the moment. From your comments earlier that I was reading, you've latched on a GRC, you find it really interesting. So I suppose to add to his question, if auditing isn't the first step, what is?
Yeah, I think it's a good first step. I think it's definitely a good first step to consider. What I would say, Harish, is define what your first step is and then apply that to where it is that you're looking. So if you've studied auditing and you're like, yeah, I think this is a good stepping stone to get into the industry, that's great. Go with that. But really, really understand what auditing is, because the thing I would want to avoid is that you get a job in auditing and then 6 months later you're like, oh my gosh, like I hate this. Like, I didn't even I don't even know what I just got into. Find your passion, let your passion decide what your first step is, and the positions that are out there to fill that. It's very uncomfortable. It's very it's a little skittish when you do that, because you're taking a little bit more control than what I think we're used to as employees. But this is also about fulfilling your passions and being happy with what you do. And happiness in what you do doesn't mean you're not going to run into problems, challenges, people you hate working with, companies that you hate working with. Like, it doesn't eliminate that. But if you can get up in the morning with all that BS that's around you and say, hey, you know what? I'm doing what I want to do. Yeah. That's where you got it. So, to answer your question, to where you could go with something tangible, sure, auditing is number one. But really, take some time, take 20, 30 minutes and say, hey, what would my ideal position be to start? Yeah. And go after that and dream. You'll be surprised how desperate our industry is for really smart people for positions that you think that maybe you're not qualified for. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but maybe you are. Just dream a little bit and allow those passions to drive where you end up in working.
100%. And I think it's self-discovery first, right? It's finding out what you actually enjoy. And it took me far too long to do that. And then it's a case of exposing yourself, not in that way, exposing yourself to as many different areas of cybersecurity as you can, and digging in a little bit into each one to actually work out what it is you're going to enjoy. And I think the other part I'd add to that is, just because you're studying something doesn't mean you might be enjoying the subject and the content, doesn't mean you're going to enjoy the job at the end of it. I was fascinated by penetration testing. Now I've spent time with penetration testers while they do their jobs. I admire them, but there's no way I could, the kind of person I am, it was a mistake. I don't like writing reports, for one, which apparently is a huge part of being a penetration tester. Who knew, right? I'll tell you what, the courses who tried to sell me, or the companies who tried to sell me their courses for $5,000, they certainly didn't mention that. But exactly. we can get onto that in a bit, maybe. Next question, Lou Rodsek. Is healthcare GRC a pain to handle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be on. And if so, why?
Yeah. It's like with any compliance, HIPAA is such a moving target, because there's so much ambiguity inside of HIPAA. Like, if you really study HIPAA, there's a lot of, Well, if you want to, or within reason, and there's a lot of ambiguity in it. And then when OCR, or HHS, or some governing body comes in to audit you, then it's like, well, why didn't you do this? It's like, well, there are no timetables around, what it is that I'm going to do for a lot of these things. It is, but I will say there is a desperate need for healthcare security professionals that know HIPAA, high tech, cold to go in and revolutionize businesses right now. Like there's just such a desperate need for it. And healthcare is one of those things that I hold very near and dear to my heart, because that's a human thing. That's not just circuits and, SD-WAN and firewalls and all like that. The healthcare organization goes down, and patient care is disrupted or eliminated altogether, people die. Yeah. We're going to throw it out there. Like, I'm pretty direct in the way that I talk about it. Like, people die. And so to have people's lives at stake with not having a handle on what the rules are to keep you safe is a very, very dangerous position to be in. So, when you look at healthcare and HIPAA and high tech in that realm, it again, that should stoke a passion in you, not like, oh, well, I got to make sure our servers are working. If they're not, then we don't go to work or people lose money. Like, no, when lives are at stake and, your patching program is 150 days out, those are lives that are at stake. So you have a real opportunity to impact physical human life in being able to handle, healthcare. But yeah, it's a pain. It's awful.
Thank you. While we're on healthcare, so we'll stick with regulated environments as a whole, whether it's financial services or healthcare. Are they a pain, or do you find that there's more structure around the regulated industries which makes it easier to do your job, or is it the complete opposite to that?
It's a necessary evil, I would say. They're good guidelines, and so this is the religious philosophical debate that we always get into. On one track is cybersecurity, on the other track is compliance. And where I say it, some people say you can't have cybersecurity without compliance, you can't have compliance without cybersecurity. Stop. Like, let's just pause there. The compliances are great because that does hold organizations accountable to the fact that they have an enterprise risk management strategy. So that's great, but it's not doing the security piece of it's on top of it. So the example I use, so here are one of my goofy analogies. If I'm a fire inspector and I go into a building and I say, okay, show me where the fire extinguisher is. And you point me to the fire extinguisher. I look at it. I say, okay, fire extinguisher. Great. Check. That's compliance. Every building needs to have a fire extinguisher in there. But if I'm doing the security piece of it, then the questions that I'm asking are, okay, take the fire extinguisher out, pull it, show me that it works. How many people inside this building know how to use a fire extinguisher? When was the last time you switched out your fire extinguisher? Yeah. That's the security piece of it. That is that's a piece of it that says, okay, you're compliant, but if it were to go down and a fire breaks out, can we actually save the organization? Can we actually help the organization? So that's how I tell people, whether it's PCI, whether it's HIPAA, whether it's SOC 2 attestation, ISO 27001, like all that stuff, like, yes, follow that, but it has to apply to the business. And I think that's where we get tripped up. I think, when we go into the board and to the executive piece, we're like, hey, we got our ISO certificate. Yay, wonderful. Let's put it on the website. Let's use it to sell more product because now we have certification to do it. But if you have all of this stuff in place and it's not functioning in the business, it's just going to frustrate everybody. It's just going to make everybody miserable. So that's kind of the way that I break that down. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think it does. I mean, there's lots of comments thanking you for that reply, and I just want to pick up on. I'm going to stick on the regulation theme for a moment. So I've got another question that I'm interested in having you answer. But Lona said a necessary evil. I'm going to use that quote to form my next question. Is regulation a necessary evil globally for cybersecurity? And this is in an ideal world. We can't even agree on what color a tin of beans should be in the UK and Europe. So the chance of us having a globally recognized regulation is probably slim to none. But do you think the industry needs to work towards more recognized standards, or do you think there's another way forward?
Yeah, no, I think so. GDPR was such a big thing that came out to kind of get that going, and it hit us stateside because there are stateside companies that are doing business in EU, and you have to comply, and that's good. From a stateside perspective, the CMMC model that's come out that I don't know if any of our people are familiar with, but CMMC is a cybersecurity maturity model certification that is geared towards government contractors and government workers that are doing business to show that you're complying with regulatory cybersecurity and risk standards. There's been a lot of rumors, and I tend to think that this is going to happen, is that is acting as a framework to have us, from a stateside perspective, to uniformly have standards that we're working for. The whole thing of like, hey, we're not going to do anything from cybersecurity perspective is business negligent. Let's just take cybersecurity out. We don't do that with physical security. And I'm a New York City kid, so this isn't an analogy to make light of it, but 9/10/2001, we had different physical security standards than we did on 9/12/2001. And it wasn't where people were like, maybe we'll put in metal detectors, or maybe we'll put in, key cards and things like. It's like, no, you're doing this because this is what needs to happen. And we really, I don't want another 9/11, or tragedy to happen, but we really need to get our minds in that perspective of, we have to do this stuff, not to inhibit things, but to safely enable the way that we do work and the way that we live our lives. So, a global standard, where everybody's marching to the same thing, I don't know. There are a lot of nuances inside of that, but I think between GDPR and then if we were to formulate, from a stateside perspective, it's all the same thing. So let me pause there and say that it's really all the same thing. Do a risk assessment. Come up with your top risk as it pertains to people, process, and technology. Come up with a plan of attack and go fix it. Like, that's what all these regulations are, and people get thrown off. They're like, well, HIPAA rule 46.I, or PCI 3.123.
Do the basics, right?
Just do it's just do the basics. And that's really when you go down through all of these compliances, and really what you can do as someone that's looking to get a job and you're interviewing. I know a lot of people said, I don't know why I'm struggling through interviews. Keep it simple, keep it basic. That's what they want to see. And that's a basic thing. When's the last time this organization has done an enterprise risk assessment? What does your plan of action and milestones look like for the next 3 to 5 years? What are we doing from a board level perspective as far as their investments inside of what it is that we're doing? Like, say that stuff in your interview, because no one else is saying it. Everyone's like, oh, well, I have this certificate, and I bet there's ISMS in this area, blah, 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 blah. And that's not everybody's saying it. So again, with my career and ways to move up, I just, the Wayne Gretzky analogy, I just skate where the puck isn't, and I just wait. And then when the puck comes, I just nail it and just go from there.
I love that analogy as well. A couple of comments that have come up that aren't the questions I want to just cover off as well. Lona, another great one. It's good as far as uniformity for basics. However, businesses should pivot according to their own business needs. And that's exactly what I think you were saying, Paul, doing that risk assessment for your business, for your industry, not for someone else's. And the other comment was from Mono. Said most organizations won't change until a penalty is handed that will affect their reputation or cash flow. And I completely agree. And I think whilst GDPR has been a big success, it isn't for the bigger companies, because the fines are so small. They'd rather just take the fine than do anything about it. And we've seen, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get sued either, but we've seen a couple of those happen recently in Europe. Right, next question, because we've only got a few minutes left and we've got about 7 questions left. So next one is from excuse me, Colby, good to see you. Do you feel that the fast-paced advancement in technology is causing the increased drive for GRC?
Do you feel that the fast pace is advancement in technology is causing the increased drive? Yeah, I do. It definitely is. Yep.
From the interconnectivity, the kind of all those bits and pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, there are tons of SaaS organizations out there right now that I had one instance where I was working with a company that won a $15 million contract with a credit card company, and they called my organization up in a panic because when they won the deal, they didn't read the fine print where the company said they had to be ISO, PCI, HIPAA, high tech, and GDPR. Well, GDPR ready, not compliant, but the other four, they had to show compliance with it, and they lied, and they said that they couldn't do it, and they shut the company down because they didn't have it. So GRC is becoming now a business advantage to have all of your certifications and everything in place. And it's hard from a startup perspective because it is expensive, whether you have to pay for someone to come in and do it or hire employees.
I'd argue it's easier to get it done at the start than it is 3 years in when you're trying to unravel everything that you've done, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we better move on to the next one, or we're not going to get all these in. Thanks, Colby, for that one. Next one is from the man himself, Joe Wells. We talk a lot about soft skills in InfoSec Live, Paul. How would you rate soft skills in the cyber and more so in the GRC world?
You need it. I mean, and if it's something that you're not comfortable with or you're not quote unquote good at, take that class. Take a communications class, whether it be written or oral communications, to be able to empathize, to be able to connect with the business. You can't lack soft skills in this industry and really truly make it and have a huge impact on it. I don't die on many hills, but I quasi will die on that hill to say you have to have it. And if you don't, then find a course that will help.
And you're right, even the most technical hands-on roles that don't perhaps involve too much customer interaction, there's still a massive need for that, right? Lou Rodsec, Jerry, yes, I have had him on. In fact, Jerry is the person who inspired me to do this channel 18 months ago. And I spoke to the man himself last week, and I'm super excited for what's going on over there. So I just wanted to get that across. Big fan of Simply Cyber. Anyone watching who hasn't subscribed to Simply Cyber, make sure you do. Maybe Lou Rodsec would kindly drop the link in the chat there for you to do that, so I don't have to try and do 3 things at once, because it's just not going to happen. Right, thanks, Joe, for that question. Lona, we'll get to your question finally. I have a master's in health information management and a master's in cybersecurity. All of my career is healthcare. With no IT experience, which roles would be best to pursue? Good question.
It's a great question. Yeah, I would find healthcare organizations that are in need of compliance officers. And I know that might seem a little bit high level, where you are in your journey, but they need exactly what you have, because here's a skill that you're bringing. The industry, and I've talked to a lot of people about this already. Greg is someone that I've talked to. He's in the automotive industry. And he's like, yeah, but I've done automotive my whole time and whatever. I'm like, great. I'm like, the industry, because if you know healthcare that well, I'm not going to tell you to go to financial services, or I'm not going to tell you to go to manufacturing. Like, the industry, the business, the jargon, the culture of healthcare. And now you're marrying that with cybersecurity. Like, you're a unicorn. Like if you can get yourself in front of the right people, and people again, there's a hiring problem that we have in our industry. And so don't be be upset. Like, I'm not telling you to be void of emotion or feeling, but the right company is going to see this experience and say, we need to bring you on, and that's where you need to be. Not you having to go to an organization and convincing them that this is the right thing to do. I've worked with very, very high level healthcare organizations. That's something they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think, as CyberYar said, I think that might be the man Richie Perry. Is that who it is? If it is, hey Richie, good to see you. The key is to understand the fundamentals of IT and then tie that to your experience and qualification. You haven't got to go 2 feet deep in the knowledge, but you need like an inch across the top. Would be my embellishment on that. Could I suggest, Lona, if you're not a member of the InfoSec Live community, please do come along and join. There's lots of people like Paul in there who offer mentor support for absolutely free. And would you mind, Paul, if I dropped your LinkedIn profile link in the chat so people can connect with you?
Yeah. Yes, please do. Please do. Okay. And, the thing that I will promise, to the group is, definitely connect with you. I will answer questions as I possibly can. Sometimes I got 4 kids and, a whole other crazy life that's behind the scenes here. But, please feel free to reach out, and any way that I can help. I want to do that. So yeah, Lona, please reach out. Those are great questions. And want to be able to be there to help out as much as I can.
Love that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Right, quick fire round now, because we've got like 4 minutes left and 5 questions. Right. Ready? Here we go. Right, here we go. Go, Harris again. We've got, which sector is challenging when it comes to GRC for entry level? Finance, healthcare, IT, others.
All of them.
All of them. Would you argue the more regulated the industry, the more difficult, because you need to know more, or am I wrong on that point?
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right.
So maybe unless you've got experience in that regulated environment, go for an unregulated environment first.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Exactly.
Perfect. Hope that helps, Harish. And sorry, this is such a quick fire round here. Manuel, question: what's your view on entry level with talent skills but no certifications? So again, this is people with lots of talent and skills. I suppose it's about demonstrating them, right?
It's finding the right organization. I know someone that had that exact scenario, and they were in charge of cybersecurity at Booz Allen Hamilton. It's finding the right organization that's going to take the chance on you to do it. I would encourage you to get certification, because again, here we go with necessary evil. Yeah. It gets you to, gets you some visibility, but it's your ability to take that complex information, make it simple, and help an organization that way.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So I'm trying to do 2 things at once again. I'm trying to reply to Lona. I'm trying to bring the next question up. Where are we? Pin messages. Thank you very much. Right, next one. Emmanuel, you've sneaked another one in right underneath. You're getting good at this. How can the CISO help with recruitment for entry-level skills? Let me throw in my 10 seconds worth. Communicate with the hiring managers and the recruiters more. Over to you, Paul.
I can't say it any better than that. Perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And we'll try to actively encourage. I've just done a massive, or Alfie, who's now working for InfoSec Live, has done a massive outreach to CISOs the last week. And we've got a list as long as my arm for shows coming up. So I'll make sure that we focus on those areas on the shows, because I think the more we talk about it, the more it's got to be able to help, right? Mm-hmm. 2 questions left. I know we've gone over time. I hope you're all right with that, Mr. Robinson.
Perfectly.
And I hope Mrs. Robinson's all right with that as well. And apologies.
She's fine. we got our date night in the next couple hours, so we're good.
Excellent.
We're good.
All right, good. As long as I'm not keeping you from that. Colby, do you feel that companies are more focused on the short-term GRC solutions and not as much the long-term?
Absolutely. Great.
Can you clarify what he means by that for Simon, please?
Yeah, if I understand it correctly, are companies just doing GRC just to get a piece of paper, just to mark off a checklist that they've done it, and not look at the big picture of what it could mean for the organization? I think I understand that correctly. If you can confirm that, that'd be great. But that's how I read it. But I would say, yeah, they are going to they're going to go for the short term. You need an organization that is getting ahead of the curve, not, we have 12 months to get ISO certified. You need someone that says 24 months behind the scenes, says, listen, this is something that we need as we grow the company. Let's do it and go from there.
Brilliant, thank you. And as Harish has just said, we're probably going to need part 2 of this show at some point. So I'm going to have you back on in the future, I think, Paul, if that's okay with you.
I'd love it. Lovely.
Right, last question. Apart from Colby, who sneaks in another one. We'll see if we can get to that in a sec, Colby. Darian, I love NIST risk management framework. How transferable is that to the other areas such as PCI, DSS, and ISO? Good question.
Very. It all is. So
is there a lot of crossover?
There is. There's some cross mapping that's involved inside of that. There are obviously some nuances inside of ISO and PCI, DSS, and whatever. But if you love NIST, you're in a great starting spot. And that's pretty much transferable to other compliances that are out there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we've got through them all, and you're going to be able to get away reasonably on time for your date night, Mr. Robinson.
No, that's all right. One thing I do want to say is I want to thank you, Simon, and I want to thank the people who make this community wonderful. If we have people on here that aren't a part of it, I don't plug things very often, but when I do, I mean it with conviction. This is a an organization and leadership team that is very, very important to our community. So please join and get the value that you can get out of it. And then once you get the value that you can get out of it,
give it back.
Then you provide the value to the other people, and that's how we keep this thing going.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's I love your thanks, but I haven't really done anything. And this is the beautiful thing about a community. I might have set it up and promoted it a little bit, but it's the people within it who make it what it is. It's not any individual's achievement. This is really, really a team effort. And I think the last 6 to 12 months, we've started to see more people not just taking, but more people taking and giving back. And I'd love to, yeah, Joe said it as well, give back. I'd love to reiterate that from Paul. You know, it's great to get all these help from leaders like I have in the industry. I try and give back by helping people who are starting up their own business, looking at sales and marketing, you know, the skills that I've got. And I'm sure that other people are looking into transition into this industry. You've got skills that all of us haven't as well, and we can benefit from that. So yeah, that would be fantastic. But Paul, thank you so much. Everyone who's tuned in again, thank you for making this such an awesome and engaged experience.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up now and let Paul go and see his good lady wife and have a nice evening. I'm going to pick my son up from training. This is the fun I have. Thank you all. Enjoy, join the community, and Paul, I hope to speak to you soon.
Oh, we'll be talking, my brother. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
We have finished, but I just thought I'd leave that up there for you just in case you wanted to click and join the community. Thanks, everyone. Have an amazing day.